This little guy is a Coros Dura solar GPS cycling computer. I've been beating it up for about a year now, along with my Coros Pace Pro watch. I hate wearing watches in day-to-day life, and I haven't worn one regularly since grade school, but I do enjoy throwing this on for jogs and hikes and other random cross training, and it checks all my boxes, and the functions are pretty much identical to the Dura, just in watch form. Anyway, I swap the Dura back and forth between all my bikes, and I've been using it on everything from cruiser gravel rides with my wife to rainy, muddy, backcountry epics and multi-day bikepacking adventures. It survived crashes and deep winter fat biking, and I'll cut to the chase and tell you that this little home wrecker has led me to officially break up with Garmin. In fact, I'll tell you a secret. I sold my well-used Garmin 540, the non-solar model, on eBay for more money than you'd pay for a brand new Coros Dura Solar. Yep. So it's obvious I'm a fan of the Dura, but it's certainly not perfect, and there's definitely room for some improvement, which I'll dive into, but let's start with the good stuff. And that's the price tag and the battery life. The Dura retails for $249, which in my opinion is dirt cheap considering the solar capabilities, the quality of the build, and the features it's packed with. You're easily looking at double that price for something like the Garmin 1040 solar model. Even the 840 and the 540 solar are going to be way more than this little Dura. The Dura's battery life is equally as impressive. Coros claims you'll get a whopping 120 hours before even factoring in the massive solar charging gains. Don't worry, I'm gonna touch on real world experiences with battery life and everything else in a sec. But yeah, $250 and insane battery life was definitely enough to pique my interest. When you purchase the Coros Dura, you get the unit itself, some instructions, a safety lanyard, a nice long USB-C charging cable, and a Coros out front mount. The mount comes with some Allen keys for installation, as well as some rubber inserts. I never used it. It's worth noting that the mount will fit either a 31.8 or a 25.4 handlebar diameter, but it's not compatible with wider 35mm mountain bike handlebars. Again, I've never bothered using the included mount because the Coros uses the same quarter turn interface as Garmin, and I've got plenty of other Garmin mounts already in use, which this is a nice plus since Coros could have easily made their own proprietary mounting system a la Wahoo. I popped the Dura on my scale for giggles and it weighed in at 102 grams, which is exactly what Coros states in their specs. For comparison, the smaller Garmin 540 weighs 85 grams and the more comparable 1040 Solar is listed at 134 grams. If you're curious about dimensions, the Dura is 99.5 millimeters long, 60.8 millimeters wide, 15.7 millimeters tall, and it has a 2.7-inch color touchscreen that illuminates below the beefy solar panel. It employs an MIP or memory in pixel display with 400 by 240 resolution. So in layman's terms, it's pretty crisp and colorful while remaining energy efficient with minimal battery drain at high brightness levels. The unit itself has a super simple design with just two buttons. There's a scroll dial that can be also pushed in, and just below it there's a regular push button. You can easily control everything and quickly fly through the menus on the Dura with these two buttons, or you can use the touchscreen instead, or a combo of both the touchscreen and the buttons. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. And for the rare occasion that you do need to charge the Dura, the USB-C port is hidden and protected on the bottom of the unit. Some other features of the Dura are an IP67 protection rating, meaning it's dustproof and waterproof and rated to be submerged in water up to 1 meter deep for a half an hour. It has 32 gigabytes of internal memory, which equates to about 1,200 hours of activity storage. It's also got a built-in compass, a barometric altimeter, a temperature sensor, all that jazz. There's also a lot of fitness type features that I haven't bothered exploring, like FTP tests, training plans, and pre-planned workouts. And like every other head unit these days, it syncs right up to third-party apps like Strava, Komoot, Ride with GPS, yada, yada, yada. and you can obviously hook it up to Ant Plus and Bluetooth devices and all your accessories. So you can receive notifications and text messages and all that through your phone, as well as display all of the eye candy and the metrics from your power meter, your heart rate monitor, electronic drivetrain, etc. All in all, you can sync up to 12 accessories to the Coros Dura at once. By the way, I paired the Dura to my Garmin Varia radar taillight, and I think the display when cars are approaching is actually cleaner on the Dura than it was on my Garmin 540. Go figure. You can set up your drink reminders or heart rate or power warnings and all that other normal stuff. And I'm probably skipping over some of the selling points, which you can scope out on the Coros website and get all the specs and info, but rest assured, the Dura has all the bells and whistles that you'd expect from a top-tier cycling computer designed with bikepacking in mind. Which reminds me, according to bikepacking.com's Riders Rigs analysis of the 2025 Tour Divide bikes that Neil did, at least 23 people trusted the Dura for their primary navigation, and I'd expect that number to rise a bunch in 2026, just saying. So yeah, out of the box, my unit had 74% battery life, and during my first ride with it, I rode for a little over 3.5 hours on a sunny day. I had my power meter, a heart rate strap, and my radar taillight connected, and I used 2.4% of the battery, but I had 2.3% solar gain, so I netted a 0.1% battery loss after 3.5 hours. Not too shabby. It wasn't until I had it for over 2 months that I actually put it on the charger when it was reading around 35%. And the only reason I did charge it was because I was doing a 9.5 hour race. So I just felt like topping it off was the right thing to do because it's kind of embedded in us to charge all our stuff before a race, right? I also figured it would be a good time to confirm that the unit could actually take a charge since I'd never tried it before. On some days, the Dura actually gains more battery life through solar charging than it expends during the activity, which is how it stays pretty much perpetually charged up. When I'm bike pack racing and riding through the night, it does eat up more battery life since there's no solar gain, but even then the battery consumption is way less than any other unit I've had. Coros states that for night riding with the backlight on high, while navigating and using accessories, you should expect about 55 hours of life on one charge. In my experience, I'd say this is pretty accurate. I should also mention that the Dura is designed to just put it in sleep mode and you don't need to turn it off unless you really want to. I've personally never turned mine off once since I got it. I don't even know if I remember how to turn it off. It just sits in sleep mode and doesn't really use much battery life at all. And then when it's time to ride, there's zero boot up time. It's always ready to rock and roll, which I absolutely love. And it's one less thing to think about or wait on when you're short on time. On the very rare occasion that you actually do need to charge it up, Coros says it takes 2.5 hours to get a full charge from 0 to 100%. Out of curiosity, I timed how long it took for me to charge mine from 17% to 100%, and it took exactly 2 hours. So 2.5 hours from empty seems about right. As far as the initial setup and getting dialed in with the Coros app, both were an absolute breeze. I bought a 3-pack of screen protectors on Amazon and I slapped one on right away to guard my investment. And I highly recommend you do this with whatever head unit you go with, same as you do with a smartphone. I crashed multiple times on the Grand Loop, and one time my Dura snapped off the mount and hit a rock and looked like it had a nice big crack across the middle of it. But I peeled the protector off when I got home, good as new, not a mark, and I simply popped another protector on. I never looked at a quick start guide or needed a user manual during setup. I personalized my displays to show what info I want super quickly. Both the Dura itself and the Coros app have simple, straightforward functions. Everything is intuitive, and you don't get bogged down with layers and layers of overcomplicated menus like I sometimes find with Garmin. I've got to say, one of my favorite things about this unit is the simplicity of it and how quickly you can get everything streamlined to your liking so you can spend more time riding instead of getting lost in a sea of confusing menus and settings. The Pace Pro watch, which has the same 2 buttons as the Dura, also functions exactly the same, and it's just as easy to use, and everything syncs up seamlessly through the app. My Stage's power meter and my Wahoo heart rate monitor made it without issue, and so did my Garmin Varia taillight. I synced with Strava, and everything has worked flawlessly since day one. At the end of your rides, even on big rides or multi-day rides, boom, it saves lightning fast, and everything is viewable right away on the Coros app, and then it pops up in Strava before I know it, and then when I open Trainer Road, the activity is waiting for me there, and then I can dissect it, silky smooth. I will note that even though I never spent time referencing the user guide during setup, it is available on the app and also the Coros website, along with a whole bunch of FAQs and other helpful information. And if you do need to get in touch with customer service, they are USA based down in Southern California, and it's easy to chat with a real human being, which is a plus in my book. Navigation and loading GPX tracks for bikepacking is easy peasy. I'll take you through a real-world example. I needed to upload the GPX file for the Grand Loop bikepacking race, and the race director, Tim, supplied us with the official route on Ride with GPS. So I simply went to the route page on Ride with GPS and followed the prompts to download the GPS track to my phone. Then I pulled it up in my downloads folder, clicked the share button, and transferred it directly into the Coros app. From there, I just clicked on sync with device, chose the Dura, and a few moments later, the track was on the Dura, ready to navigate from. It's about as simple as it gets. And if I wanted it on my watch instead, I could have just chosen the Pace Pro, sunk it with that, boom, done. Or I could have done it with both. Super simps. Coros uses Google Maps for rerouting if you get off track, but you can easily cancel this feature if you prefer. And they also have their own free base maps loaded up. You can pull maps up in the app and select or deselect regions that you want loaded in the Dura. Like everything else, the process is intuitive and straightforward. At first, I was a little bummed I couldn't load aftermarket base maps with more detail, etc. But after using them for a while, I found the Coros base maps to be more than adequate, and it hasn't been an issue. Sometimes I do wish I could zoom in a little farther into the map for those times when you're trying to make sure you're on the right trail on a remote GPX track, but it's not that big of a deal, and I've never been led astray. I've grown to love the touchscreen and button pressing combo. Usually I find the touchscreen easier to use while I'm riding, especially when I'm trying to flip through different screens while I'm off-road and on rougher terrain. I found the touchscreen to be highly responsive, and it works with my full finger gloves. At other times when I'm not moving, or if I'm starting and ending a ride, or I need to get a little deeper into the menus, I prefer to use the dial and the push buttons. But I really like the fact that it's not either or, and I've always got 2 choices, and everything works well with full finger gloves on. I also like knowing that if for some reason a button fails or the touchscreen is having trouble, then there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I could, in theory, still use the unit and maintain its functionality while out in the wild. And if you don't necessarily like the touchscreen or you keep hitting it accidentally, you can adjust the settings so that it's only activated during activities and it's turned off otherwise. Like I mentioned, my unit has been through multiple crashes, it's been through rainstorms and dust storms, and it's had goo and gels smeared on it and sweat dripped all over it. Everything has washed off, and you'd never know because it still looks just like new. I never lost connection with my phone or my heart rate monitor or power meter. It's been super reliable across the board, and it continues to work as perfectly as it did on day one. The display screen is always easy to read. I've never had a single issue with the automatic brightness display. Day or night, overcast or full sun, inside or outside, the display is always crystal clear. And even with these old eyes, I'm never squinting to see it. I also like how the Dura tracks battery stats between charges and rides, and it gives me a low battery warning for my power meter and my heart rate monitor and other accessories, which is very helpful now that we have so many wearables and so much tech to stay on top of. I know that other computers do this as well, but again, at a $250 price point, these seemingly insignificant or no-brainer features can't be taken for granted. So it's probably pretty clear that after all my real-world experiences, I'm definitely sold on this product and I give it 2 thumbs up, but that doesn't mean there isn't some room for improvement. There always is. So if I were to get nitpicky, here are some additional improvements I'd like to see in the future firmware updates and or the next Dura model that's released. As I mentioned already with the navigation, we should have the ability to zoom in farther on the map page. There's been a few instances where I really want to zoom all the way in and make sure I'm on course, and it won't let me go nearly as far as I can with my older Garmin eTrex. I asked a buddy of mine at a bikepacking race who is also using a Dura for a long time if there's any improvements he'd like to see, and he mentioned he'd like to see an option to change font sizes, which I think would be great too. For example, I love how you can display something like your average power, current 3-second power, and max power in the same field, but when you do this, the fonts of the non-primary data are a little too small. And when you have bad eyes or old eyes, just being able to tweak them would be a nice feature. I'd also like the ability to turn alert noises on and off individually. For example, I set my hydration alert for every 15 minutes, and I do like hearing the beep as a reminder. But when I'm navigating on a route, the unit beeps at me every time I start a climb, which can wind up being quite often and get to be pretty annoying, so I'd like to turn that beep off. But as of now, the beep tones are either all on or all off, and you can't specify them for individual actions. Speaking of the climbing feature, for the time being when you're navigating from a GPX track, the climbing display automatically appears on the map screen. When it does, number one, it takes up the bottom area of the map, and this diminishes the visible area of the track you're on. And number two, I don't always want to stare at my climbing profile and stats while I'm looking at the map and double checking that I'm still on the track. I'd prefer if there was a way to turn the climb display feature on and off independently and not have it forced on me whenever I'm looking at the map display during navigation. If there's someone out there that knows of a workaround for this that I ignorantly haven't figured out, or Coros, if you're listening, maybe I've overlooked something, or I probably should heed my own advice and just call customer service and speak to a human in California. But I'm lazy, so please let me know in the comments if you've figured out a way to hide the climbing display feature. Another feature I'd love to see added is the ability to put the unit to sleep during an activity to further conserve battery while I'm bikepacking. Right now, if you're navigating and have started an activity, the unit will stay on with the screen on automatic brightness indefinitely. So let's say I'm in a bikepacking race and I'm done riding for the day and I'm gonna sleep for a few hours. Unless I end the activity, the unit just stays on, working, draining the battery. Sure, I can end the activity and start a new one, but sometimes I like to have the whole activity saved as one so that I can easily analyze stopped versus moving time and total time later on, etc. So there's no way to manually put the unit in sleep mode like you can if you're not engaged in an activity where you can just hold the bottom button for 3 seconds. If you hit this button during an activity, it just records a lap for you. And if you press the scroll button, it pauses the activity. So yeah, not the end of the world, but it would make the battery last even longer if it could go to sleep during long activities. I'm assuming this wouldn't be too hard to solve in a future update. Again, I can be an idiot, so if you found a fix for this, please share in the comments. As far as data fields go, there are a couple that I haven't found that I'd love to have the option of incorporating. First up is kilojoules. There is a calories field, but a pro unit geared towards structured training like this should have the option of viewing kilojoules of energy instead of just calories burned. I also wish there was a TSS field so I could see the training stress score during certain rides and interval efforts, etc. Another data field I haven't been able to find is average moving speed. There's average speed, but it includes stop time. Especially when I'm bikepacking, I like to know my average moving speed without having that number tarnished by resupply, filtering water, sleep, etc. as that gives me a better indication of how well I'm traveling, approximate distance to next resupply, etc. I'm assuming that has to be a super easy one for them to add on a firmware update. Along those lines, I'd also love to see a data field for stop time without having to use the auto pause feature. Right now, it'll only display and factor in stop time if auto pause is enabled, and I don't like to use auto pause. When you view your ride after the fact in Strava or whatever, you can see your moving time and total elapsed time and deduce stop time, so it shouldn't be too hard to add this display field with an update. I find that it helps a bunch for bikepacking when you're trying to be efficient with resupply and all of that stuff, to know that if I had 45 minutes of downtime or 2 hours and 45 minutes of downtime after 16 hours to help keep me on task and hitting specific resupply goals. All right, so that's probably enough nitpicking. And in closing, just a reminder, I am extremely happy with the Coros Dura. It's fantastic as it is, and I can only imagine it's just gonna get better and better from here on out as they implement feedback from riders like you and me and all the pros they've got rocking their products. For $250, you'll be hard pressed to find anything that offers this type of value in the super competitive cycling computer market. I still can't believe that I can go out on a ride and have more battery life when I finish than I did when I started. And I do believe solar units are gonna start making dinosaurs of the eTrex models for most uses in the upcoming years. eTrex kind of sounds like a dinosaur name, T-Rex. Anyway, as always, let me know your thoughts, concerns, and any insights you may have in the comment section so we can all learn together. Super stoked to be back. I know it's been a while since I made a video. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, ride bikes, give back, pay it forward. Thanks so much for squeezing dirty teeth into your busy schedule. Please help us reach more people and ensure you receive new videos by giving this video a like, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notification bell. Until next time, ride bikes, give back, pay it forward.